I might just download the YouTube one and pull it up because it might be easier to repeat, or not download the TikTok. To repeat, when we're looking at the burials from the Venus of Willendorf and, or not, from the culture surrounding the Venus of Willendorf and from the culture surrounding the Venus of Prospelmy, we're not seeing shells in association in the grave sites, to my knowledge, that might suggest that this is a headpiece. Again, if you're looking at a grave and you've got your head here and your feet here, and you have jewelry or shells in that grave, what you're going to do is associate where you see the shells in that grave to determine what kind of jewelry you were wearing, right? So if you have shells that seem to be all around the skull, like they've fallen off the skull, or they lay around and maybe even underneath the skull, absolutely a headdress. If you see shells that seem to be across the breast, then you might be looking at a shell breastplate. If you see shells that seem draped like this or fallen like this, maybe a couple are underneath the neck or the skull, then you're looking at probably a necklace. If you see shells that seem to be around the arm or in the region where the arm is in the grave site, and maybe a couple are underneath, maybe you're to either side, or even just shells in that area, you're going to assume that it's a bracelet. To my understanding and current research, we do not have shells in association with the cultures. These are Gravacian and Aquarium, which is also Gravacian, like they're an interbred or like a culture that comes from each other. These cultures, to my knowledge from what sites we found, do not show an actual headdress in the sites. So to me, this states that these are actually more likely to be braided styles. The reason that I state that is because that's the evidence that I have. It takes a leap to get to the idea that these are shells caps. And the reason it's a leap to get to the idea that they're shell caps is, again, no evidence of cap and braid or in graves. Where do you get the idea that it's shells? Do you see that in the cultures prior? Do you see that in the culture descended from? Do you see that in the graves? Do you see that in anything else? Then, well, it must be shells because it can't be braids, because I've determined that people didn't braid their hair like that, right? And so that's why, to me, the shells become a stretch. There doesn't seem to be information that really supports that. Now, it does not mean it's not out there. It just means that I haven't seen it. If somebody has information that supports that it's actually a shell headdress, please send it my way. I'll take a look at it, because that would be kind of cool. But to my knowledge, there's not information that actually supports that. Again, we get into the idea that so many people are putting American-centric ideas on the rest of the world. This starts with the understanding that, starts with a change of understanding of what the people in Europe are actually looking like at this time, right? So many people are on this thought process that we have to double down that certain things belong to different cultures and not to a global culture, or not a global understanding, right? And that is understandable on so many levels. I don't have a problem with trying to uplift, right? We absolutely want to uplift. And I totally have that feel that if somebody's been dogged on for something for so long, then, people who have been dogging on them shouldn't be using it, right? At the same point, I feel like when we wash history in one color, be it black or white or red or yellow, when we wash history in one color, we ignore the diversity that is the amazing about our species, and we ignore the effects of history on different cultures. So unless I find different evidence, it's braids to me. When we're looking further down, I'm going to show the rest of these on my computer. That means that YouTube, you're not going to see them. I'm sorry. But again, every time I try and move my camera on YouTube, it becomes problematic. And I think that it's just the attachment. There's something wrong with it. And so I'm not going to fuck with it and fuck it up again. I will be uploading most of these pictures to my website, though, later today or tomorrow, so that you'll be able to have access to the pictures. like I was saying before, it's not that I have a whole lot of articles that go into these things, but I do have a lot of pictures that show different things that we have seen. I'm going to try and go back further first is what I'm going to try and do. But some of these pictures are in just different, the way that they are on my computer, it might not be as easy to give you guys the oldest. Let me see if I can find what I had. Oh, okay, there we go. So the first thing that we're going to look at is some of the Syrian Akkadian artwork. And the Assyrian Akkadian artwork is coming from the Levant area, the Middle East, right? Um, there was a grave uncovered in northern England that was covered in crystals a little bit ago. I'd have to find it again to give information on it, but it was a really cool find. And it was just covered in crystals. They called it like a crystal cave. It was one of the ones that they thought was King Arthur's, actually. It was kind of weird. But it's in northern England and it's totally covered in crystals. Let me flip my camera really quick. So these are New Assyrian, Old Assyrian, Elamite, Akkadian. Okay, this is a compilation. And if you look like this Akkadian one, this is as clear to a braid in artwork as you can get right here. You can see this is a little bit harder with reflection, but there's actually cross hatching. This is really interesting because it comes all the way around. And I'm not sure if we're looking at like the bottom part of this hat here, or if this is hair and this is a crown that rests on the hat or on the hair, right? And this is hair that is kind of braided around the crown, but it seems to come down and wrap around him as well, though this could also be a cloak. It's a little bit hard to distinguish in this picture. This is a Babylonian lute player, and you can see, now this can be a couple of different things. This design in this particular one could be twists of hair, it could be curls, it could be braids, or it could be locks. And this one here is the same. This could be trying to identify a curl in the hair. It could be trying to identify a braid in the hair, or it could be trying to identify a lock in the hair, right? I'm going to flip you around to look at my weird ass face while I find the next picture because I want to make sure that I'm not. No, that's not the one I wanted. So now I'm going to take you to the Celts. And as we're looking at the Celts, what we're going to look at is the artwork of the Celts. This is a boa statue. And you can see here where it is literally a crosshatch where you can see that it's braided together. So this is two sides of a statue. Can you hear me now, Kylie? Can you hear me now, okay? Let me know, let me know. I might have screwed things up because I'm good at that. Let me know if you can hear me. Okay. Kylie, you still can't hear me? Okay. Let me. Okay, so when we're looking at this, you see that this crosshatch design is clearly braiding the hair together. Okay. What they're braiding together, whether it's locks or other braids or just the way that they're defining the hair itself, we're not sure. But you can see that that crosshatch is a clear braid. I like this one because this is, I believe it's like a breastplate or a bowl. And you can see that he has his hair like clearly wrapped up, right? So this is almost like a twist, maybe a lock, right? This is not really a braid. It could maybe be a braid. You're seeing these little things here. This could actually be a braid, right? But it's more like that it's a twist or a lock. You're not seeing, extremely curled hair like this in Celts. Like, if you're looking at, let me see, this is Grecian. If you're looking at a Grecian one, you can see that this is very clearly curls in her hair, right? This is very clearly a detail of the way that they did their ringlets, right? This is all kind of braids up in here, but this is very clearly a detail of ringlets. But the Celts didn't have that stylized ringlet society or fashion that you see. Yeah, absolutely. That you see within many of the Grecian societies or Syrian societies, right? Hey, Mia. So, because of that, this is very unlikely to be that. And we also see over here where it's almost like it's stylized, wrapped up, locks into like a helmet, right? You also can kind of see this bare back of the head here too. That kind of is reminiscent of later Nordic styles that are talked about. This is the another view, not another view, but another similar stylization of a man of ancient Celtic society. And it's not very clear, I know, and I'm sorry. But you can see that it's very similar. There's actually kind of three braids across here, or three locks across here, and the beard is all the same. Um, these are the ones that we have of the ancient Celts that I have on my computer. I don't have a whole lot. Uh, when we're looking at the ancient Celts, we see that kind of tight coil curl or dread of the beard, and then we see this braid. The When we move further north is where we start looking at the Nordic, and within the Nordic, sorry, I got a call and it stopped my thing. Within the Nordic, you can see these kind of look like locks. Uh, but when you're going, I'm going to flip my camera around really quick. When you're going into the Scandinavian countries, you get, I've got to find what I'm looking for, something called the Polish plate. So this is documented pretty early on in a Dutch country. I believe this is in Holland itself, but in a Dutch occupied or in a Scandinavian country. I believe this is Holland. And you can see this is a young woman, maybe an older woman, and her hair has turned into an entire plate. It's all unbrushed. It's all one heavily matted lock. Not only do we see this in early picture plates that they did, but this is an example in a museum of a Polish plate. So we see that it's not only something we're seeing within early drawings of what Hollanders look like, but it's okay. But it's also something that we have seen archaeological evidence of. This is another example of a Polish plate. And you can see where this person's hair is all locked up. So these are examples within Scandinavian countries where it has carried down into at least, I think I think this is like 17, 1800s. No, that stylized dress is earlier than that. So this picture here is absolutely 17, 1800s. It's probably late 1700s. Um, that style of dress might be peasant style of dress for that time period. This is probably 16, 1700s here. I believe this is older to my understanding. Yeah, it really looks uncomfortable and painful to me. And this is by this style of dress, I would say probably because it's so little of the shirt to see. This style here makes me think that it's probably like 15, 16, but it could be earlier or it could be later. And then this, again, we have very little style of dress, but it is definitely, probably uh, pre 1700s with this style of dress. So what we're looking at is definitely older examples of what we're seeing are actual later examples, sorry, not older examples of what we're seeing in things like this. This is a statuette of Freya, a jewelry piece of Freya. And you can see they have this thing where they kind of tie themselves into their hair into this knot. But if you're looking, the hair is all one solid piece that's being threaded into this knot. That's not something that you really do a lot with natural hair that's naturally straight, right? It has to kind of lock up or be very matted for you to get straight, fine hair to actually tie. Tried it. Um, so we're definitely seeing that this kind of, uh, am I still frozen? La, da, da, da. Let me know if I'm still frozen. Um, trying to make okay. Uh, it's definitely something that we're seeing that is translating down into from the Viking times, right? Going forward into more modern times after the conquering the Christian colonization is typically what I call it. So that is Scandinavia. Um, I'm going to pop this back around while I look for a couple of other things. When we get to, and this is actually prior to that, let me make sure, I want to make sure, because I have like different ones named. Let's see if that's the right one. No. When we get back into Greece, we see that the Minoans absolutely have locks. Now, this is particularly important when we're looking at things like the Cleopatra issue that's currently going around. This is Minoan Greece. This is the same nation or overall peoples that the Macedonians come from. And you are not looking at a very lightly melanated person, but you're not looking at a very darkly melanated person. And you are absolutely looking at somebody who is distinguished as Caucasian. And we're looking at somebody who is distinguishable as Caucasian and yet has their hair dreadlocked. So this is Minoan Greece. This is another Minoan Greece. And again, we're seeing that Caucasian skin tone, Caucasian being darker than most people like to think, but lighter than, other skin tones. North Africa, all around the Mediterranean, the Caucasus region, the Arabic regions, these are all definitely Caucasian. This is another Minoan example. We see the beautiful bare breasts of the Minoan Greek women, but we also see their hair in locks. This is an example of a Minoan woman with actually, I would say this is probably Egyptian or North African. And I say Egyptian or North African because of the stylized of this kilt, right? This looks like a very Egyptian kilt, right? So we see that she's actually rather pale, though that's more light. I mean, obviously she's painted that way because it's definitely lighter than this, right? So they put some white on there, but that's probably more of a royal women have a tendency to not go out into the sun, so their skin becomes extremely pale. So, kind of a signifier of royalty, especially when you see that she is followed by four men who. So these could be from anywhere. This could not be from North Africa. This could be absolutely from the Arabian Peninsula. This can be from the Levant area. All of this coloring and hairstyle could absolutely be from those things or those areas. It is only the kilt style here that is telling me that this is most likely Egyptian. And again, only the kilt style. I'm not exactly positive. Oh, come on, babe. There we go. Here's another Minoan woman. I just love the look at how big my boobies are of all the Minoan women. Like they were definitely bare breasted. They wear these kind of like half jackets that cover their arms but leave their breasts and their bellies bare. But you can see here that they absolutely have beautiful dreadlocks going on or beautiful locks going on. And this again, and you can see actually this is not a skirt. If you look, this is very clearly pants that she's wearing. Do you see how this goes here? It's very clearly divided, very clearly showing the divide even up in here, even up in here. Like it's very clearly a divided skirt with that beautifully exposed breast. This is another example of Minoans. And yet another. This is actually this is Greece. This is not Minoan. And I believe at least, and the reason I believe is you can see that this is more of a tied off knot here, like it is a, Greek Pablos dress, and it doesn't expose her breasts. And she also has these two sheaths of grain, which are a very Grecian thing. Again, Greek Minoans are Greeks, but Minoans are like Greek is the overall. So this is most likely over on the mainland, most likely more Athenian because of the styling here. This is what makes me say that this is most likely a representation of Athenian or maybe Spartan or something more mainland because there's not the exposure of the breast. And this tie off here is usually a drape. Yeah, with the Minoans. And really, so not just that one, but several of them. This one looks a little bit more like a skirt and it shows that downward, but you can also see in this that this is many layers of skirt, right? And again, you see the exposed breast. Come on. Are you going to work for me? Give me. This one is a skirt with the downward. The other one, though, the reason that I believe that that looks more like pants is because you can see this clear like individualization of the leg. I know, right? They all tame gravity. They've all tamed gravity in a huge, huge way. Yeah, culottes. That's a great way to say it. It's more likely culottes. Okay, so I need to pull out a. Oh, I see why. I see what happened. So as we're back on Freya here. As we're looking through the Minoans, and we start to get to other areas. We've looked at ancient Norway. Here's another example of aggression style where you can see that it's either twisted or braided back. And it is definitely in rows, right? This one I love. This one very much looks like she's got her hair up. This is Greek as well. Like she's got her dreadlocked hair pulled back up into two actual little ponytails, right? Now this one, again, earlier we were talking about you could see some very distinct curls on some of them, and this one is definitely like a distinct curl. It's a little harder to see on the reflection, but if you look over on him, you see that it's not a curl. On him, this is not a curl. This is almost, I mean, I don't think you can get really a clear representation of a dreadlock, right? This one here, you can see the way that it goes down makes it look more like it's a ringlet, right? Now, we have examples that are more modern across the world as well. And so I'm going to show some of those. And one of the reasons that I'm showing some of these is because of the fact, well, okay, so first I'm going to go at something a little bit older. It's not necessarily modern. It's going to give me a couple different ones. So this is Incan. And if you look at this girl, let me get my camera to work right, sorry. If you look at this girl, you can see that the tips of her hair are extremely straight, right? She has that very Turtle Island indigenous coarse straight hair, and she has thousands of micro braids in her hair. See you later, Sleepy. It'll be up on YouTube. I just won't be able to have the pictures on YouTube. So I might just load this one up on YouTube. That one. There we go. And this one both show micro braids here in Incan mummies. When we get to the Nazca people, we start to see dreadlocks. We actually see a lot of dreadlocks in the Nazca skeletons. And again, I want to point out that when we're looking at the tips, we are not seeing, and even within the dread, you can see dreads in straight hair look somewhat different than dreads in coiled hair, right? You can even see where it kind of fluffs off here, and you can see that these are absolutely straight hair that's being dreaded, just because I know that that's something that can be debated a lot, that it means something else. Here's another one. I've got a better picture of this. I think that's actually this one. Again, you can see those dreads and you can see that the hair is straight on that. This is another example in Nazca of dreadlocks. Again, those mummies in the first one, this is another one where they're in caves, and you can see how straight the hair is here. And you can see that it's dreadlocked in here. Another one where you can see the absolute straight hair. And then these huge chunky dreadlocks on this one. I have another one that actually shows like where you can see this huge layout. It might just be on my phone. Let me see if I've got it on here. I do not. I have another one that shows this huge layout in some Aztec, no, in the Nazca mummies, where the hair is laid out behind her head beautifully. I'm going to see if I can get it pulled up. This might pause me a second. Awesome. It might pause me a second on YouTube while I pull this up. Oh, not on YouTube, sorry. Okay, I don't have it on this. I screenshot it. It's on here. It's just way buried, and I'm not going to be able to find it. So let me go ahead. I do have that one. I've showed it before, but it is kind of buried. So let me go ahead and go back into some of these other images that I have. So we're going to look at a couple of different modern spaces. So this here is Bulgaria. Let me flip my camera because it's not going to help me without flipping the camera, right? This is, oh, sorry, I went forward. Oh, maybe I skipped somewhere. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this here is Bulgaria. And you can see not only braids, but like jewelry put into the braids. This is late 18, early 1900s. These are all pictures that are very old from the very beginning of pictures. What I love with these Bulgarian braids is that, like you see, they braid them into something to make a straight line and they braid them all together here, right? So there's more decoration than just the micro braids of it. This is Mongolia. Oh no, that's also to Bulgarian. I apologize. Here's more braids in Bulgaria. I agree with that, Tamara. And that's for me, that really happens mostly here in America. Um, and we get so centric here that it's really ridiculous. And I really fully believe that we should be supporting everybody wearing braids. We should not be like, you can't wear them because you're black, or you can't wear them because this or white, or I think that we really need to look at them as the universal that they are. Oh, this is another Viking one from earlier. So this is showing how their hair is kind of like in little dreads in this one, and then put into that knot. And then this is another one. These were way in the back, where it's kind of showing their hair kind of dreaded and then braided together. Let me, 1 second, I'm going to turn us back around. America is a mess right now, but the United States has been a mess for a long time. And it's mainly because the United States is jacked from its inception. Is this another Viking one that I missed? It is. This is a Viking wood carving that I missed earlier. And you can see within this one, the locks and the hair as well. This is Yuma. And you can see that the Yuma people are have locks. These are Tibetan. This is Peru. And these are actually braids into a mask. And this is India. And I agree with that too, Tamara. I agree that so first of all, like we have this idea that protective hairstyles actually protect hair, and they don't. The reason protective hairstyles were used was to kind of shame Black women for their hair, kind of say that you couldn't be natural in a workplace. This is why we came up with the Crown Act, right? Um, and this is an extremely problematic issue. It's one that should be addressed, and it's one that should be dealt with, and it's one that should be discussed as we're moving forward, and we're, normalizing hairstyles specifically, right? Uh, there should be nothing that tells you that you should be ashamed of your natural hair. There should be nothing that tells you that your natural hair is in any way dirty. There should be nothing that tells you that your natural hair is a problem in any way, right? Um, and when we're looking at these different things, so one of the issues with box braids is that this issue really came about, and I don't remember the name of the girl who was the girl who went to, I think it was like Jamaica, and she had her hair box braided, and she's famous. She came back, and she's got this weird name. Um, Derek something or another, something like that. And Bo Derek, is it Bo Derek? Is that a girl? Anyways, I'm horrible with famous people. She brings them back and she makes them like everybody should wear them. But the entire time it's been something that people have to wear so that they're not attacked, right? So when we look at things like that, we see, thank you, Shayla. Yeah, I thought it was Boderick, but I can't even remember. When we see that, this is where it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem when it's okay for a white girl to come in and wear something that she, hasn't been wearing or hasn't been associated with her, that has been associated with another group when that other group is getting harm from it. That's absolutely, a problem. It's absolutely a problem that Black women in particular have been told how to style their hair, right? There are certain situations we all get told how to style our hair, like in the military. You had to braid your hair up, you had to put your hair up in some way, or you had to have it cut to where it wouldn't go on the neck, right? This was a requirement for any woman in the military, right? Kicked out of jobs, kicked out of schools. There are spaces and places where people should be, required to wear their hair in a specific way. Spaces and places when your hair could get caught in heavy machinery, and therefore you need to have your hair up so that it doesn't get caught in heavy machinery and you end up dead, right? Spaces and places where telling somebody how to wear their hair is a safety issue. But in an office building, who gives a flying fuck? Right? And in an office building in mainstream areas, wearing box braids, wearing braids of any kind, really became, especially, probably from the 50s to 60s on, really became something that was kind of required of Black women, right? Nobody else had to do it. I could wear my hair down. Nobody was going to bitch about the fact that my hair was flying around, and my hair is going to fly around a lot more than a Black girl with an afro, right? My straight, fine ass hair worn down is going to go everywhere. Whereas a Black girl with an afro straight or curled hair is going to be right here. It's not going to get in your dinner, but my straight, fine ass hair is going to get in your dinner, right? So all of those things are very problematic. There is no reason on the blessed Mother Earth that we should have been telling anybody to try and appear more something else. That is something we absolutely have to end. That is something that we absolutely have to maintain the work on ending, right? Braids are cross cultural, they are something that comes everywhere. There are specific patterns and styles that are not cross cultural. There are specific ways of doing your hair that are not cross cultural. And whether or not braids are cross cultural, if I enter into a workplace and I have braids and Tamara has box braids, right? And Tamara is getting, or I have my natural hair in a workplace and Tamara has her natural hair in a workplace. And I don't know if yours is tightly coiled. Some of the pictures I've seen of you, I think probably, right? But say you're wearing your hair natural and it afros up, and I'm wearing my hair at natural and it's just straight as shit. If you're getting shit and I'm not getting shit, then I should be the one speaking up, right? If you're getting shit for wearing your natural hair and I'm not getting shit for wearing my natural hair, it's my job to speak up and say, why are you giving her shit for her beautiful natural hair that she's wearing, right? Um, if we're both entering into the space and you're told that you have to style your hair with box braids because your natural hairstyle is too wild or it's too this or it's too that, right? Then I should have to style my hair with box braids too because my natural hair is too wild. My natural hair is wilder than yours. My natural hair is going to fly everywhere. Yours is not, right? I should have to wear box braids as well. If it is something to protect the rest of us from hair flying around, then it's something that I should be wearing, right? And that's another one. We should always be moving through life kindly and with consideration to others. We should always be moving through life, looking at others' actions in the kindest light first, right? Until they have proven something differently. In the society and in the space that we live in, though, that takes extra steps anymore. For me to be able to be kind to somebody else in the society that we live in, looking the way that I do, it might take me the extra step of saying, "Why the fuck are you giving my sister shit for her hair?" Right? It might take me the extra step of, speaking out for somebody else. Those are those kindnesses that we're supposed to be doing for each other. We're supposed to be stepping for each other, right? We're supposed to be lifting each other, right? Yeah. And that's the other thing. It is a multifaceted subject, right? We were talking yesterday. I've had box braids before because I've had a sister who was doing hair, who was learning how to do hair, who was going to school for it. And she was like, I really want to braid your hair. I really need somebody to practice on. I said, okay. My daughter's wedding, I wore box braids. They were beautiful, green and blue and long. And I had really short hair at the time. It was a lot of fun. You know, uh, I was wearing box braids because somebody needed my head, right? And I enjoyed every minute of wearing those box braids, right? That was an entirely appropriate behavior. Now, if I, knowing that the ancient Romans were braiding shit into their hair, like we have documents of them actually taking and braiding slaves' hair into their hair, they would shave their Celtic slaves' heads. They really preferred red curly hair, and so they would shave their Celtic slaves' hair and they would braid their Celtic slaves' hair into their hair and form different things with those braids, right? So I know this information. I've known this information forever. So if I were to take other hair and just braid it into my hair and it's a Roman hairstyle, that's perfectly acceptable. And I'm taking this and I'm braiding it in and I'm using it. And that's perfectly acceptable. It's not perfectly acceptable if I'm doing that and somebody else is getting shit for doing something similar. And I don't go, why are you giving them shit and not me? Right. It's perfectly acceptable for me to go back to ancestry and understand it and bring it forward. But it is not perfectly acceptable if I do that and use it as a platform, if I do that and use it as a way to silence others, and if I am not speaking up for others while I'm doing it. If I can do it, why can't they? Right? If I can do it, why can't you? Right? So when we're looking at things like braids or dreads or twists or, scarves is one that really came up recently. We need to understand that all of these things go back so far within us as a society, as a people, right? That they're very kind of across everything, right? We have to remember that at one point, the vast majority of our society was tightly coiled hair, right? At one point, there might have been some in our initial species who had a little bit less of the coil to their hair, but for the most part, we know that we speciated with tightly coiled hair, right? So, I mean, one point, we all had tightly coiled hair, you know, so using those designs kind of comes down through society. When we're looking at the goddess of Willendorf and the Venus of Blasphemy, when we're looking at those, because of the timeline, we can actually assume that those are Black women at the time. We can actually assume that they're what we picture as Black women at the time. They probably had light eyes, but they were probably extremely dark of skin and they probably had tightly coiled hair, right? And that is ridiculous, Tamara. It is ridiculous. We had to pass those laws in protection, right? That we had to protect people in those areas. Yes, Jedi scarves. I have a video about it because somebody was trying to say that scarves were only African and that people who were not African couldn't wear hair scarves. I spent a year and a half in an Islamic camp as a child. Most Islamic people, I mean, like Islam doesn't start in Africa. There is Islamic countries in Africa, but you know, it's also a very Caucasian. In fact, being in Iraq and being in Kuwait, they told me in Iraq and in Kuwait, we're Caucasian. I saw redheads with freckles who were natural born there, who had been there for generations, right? Like we're talking about a Caucasian region and they're wearing headscarves and they have been. And I learned how to wear headscarves from Iranian people in a school that it was Islamic in Goldendale, Washington when I was a little girl, right? So I'm looking at this and I'm going, you don't know. Like, no. And they're like, well, it's Egyptian. There's no headscarves in ancient Egypt. What they tried to show me was a headscarf is actually a tie it's called a cess and it's actually underneath the crown and it's very specific and it's very well known. But there's no headscarves, right? Scarves, tying and wrapping something around your hair really goes back a few thousand years to our understanding, to our documentation, to our seeing, and it's pretty much cross cultural. We see it in the Middle East, we see it in Greece, we see it in uh, Asian countries, we see it really until Islam moves in, not so much in African countries, to my knowledge. That doesn't mean it's not there. But we see that the scarf really goes everywhere, right? And we see that actually most European countries covered their hair up until very recently. It was actually a sign of modesty to cover your hair, the same sign of modesty that we see within Islamic cultures to cover their hair, right? And then we do get to the Poles, we get to the Ukrainians, we get to many different areas and regions who actually not only have have a specific scarf tradition, but they also have specific patterning in their scarves, styles in their scarves that go back thousands of years that they've really been holding on to, right? Some indigenous North Americans actually did wear turbans. Some indigenous North Americans actually have dreadlocks. I have uh, baby Jack from the Cree people in dreads. I have pictures of that. That's on the hold on. So these ones I did get screenshotted. So this is going to pause me, maybe. This is baby Jack, who is Cree. We can see him wearing dreads. I think I actually have a turban picture. So give me a second. This is probably going to pause my live. Shit. I do not on here. I apologize. It's actually so I have a Facebook friend who does little blurbs and will pull up pictures from stuff. And I tend to get a lot of my pictures of indigenous groups in different spaces from him because he goes through and he like documents it all. And I'm like, oh, these are really cool, right? So when we're looking at these, we absolutely see not only are these things like across Eurasia and Africa, but they are absolutely these hairstyles are absolutely in both North and South America prior to colonization. Uh, and we see that headscarves are really a head covering that really goes around. All of these things come out of necessity. After our live yesterday, I was actually talking to somebody, they're probably in here, and they were talking about using a pencil in their hair, which I've been doing for years. So there's only a few ways that you can get your hair to stay out of your face prior to elastic, right? So it might not work because my hair is kind of shorter still. But one of the ways is you can absolutely take a pencil, knot your hair. Well, it wouldn't be a pencil at this point in time, probably a bone. Many of the bone pieces that we see that we might associate with awls or needles could absolutely be used for this. You can absolutely do this to keep your hair out of the way, right? Um, but if you are trying to just put your hair together and you're not sticking something through it like a bun, you can't just tie straight hair. Now, if you have ultra fine, ultra straight, 1A, however you want to call it or classify it, hair, Asians do it. A lot of people, a lot of cultures do it. And I think that they were talking about an Asian culture when they were telling me yesterday. If I just take a piece of leather and tie a ponytail in my ultra straight hair like this, it's going to fall out really easily, right? This is something I learned at 5, actually, because I kept trying to do that. My mom was like, you have to do this. If, on the other hand, I take my ultra straight hair and take and braid it, I can instead use a piece of leather. Now, what you have to do with this, you can't just tie it at the end or it does the same thing with this ultra straight hair. You have to braid it into the hair itself. So if I take a piece of leather and braid it into my ultra straight hair, then I can use this piece of leather to tie the end of my ultra straight hair. Oh. And I'm not going to pull this out. It's not going to come out, right? So you can't really ponytail your hair until we get to elastic and expect it to stay in if you have straight hair. I do know that if your hair is curly or tightly coiled, that you can. I'm very envious, very jelly on that one. But if you have ultra straight hair, it's impossible. You have to have something that will actually, you know, work, that will actually hold your hair together. Um, and sticks are wonderful. I do love sticks, though you want to make sure it's sharpened. You want to make sure it's something with a point on it, or it breaks your hair as it goes in. Um, but when we're, yeah, we're saying pencil. It wouldn't have been a pencil at the time, but anything that is, I can use anything that's long and has a point, right? I can use it and stick it in. If you are to take like just a regular branch that or stick, then that rough end is going to catch in your hair the whole time in. We see a lot of hairpins throughout history. Hairpins is actually one of those earlier things. And I was looking at, like, we were talking tattoo needles yesterday, and some of the pictures of tattoo needles and some of the pictures of early awls and early bone needles actually makes me think of different things that you could stick through your hair. Like, it is something that you could either use it as a tattoo needle or stick it through your hair, right? So there is a possibility of using those as well. Though, I mean, there's as much as possibility of that as braiding. I just want it to be understood that I can't just tie my hair back. I have to do something else with it. I can't just, and even like at this length, that pencil wouldn't stay in my hair for long. Just wouldn't. It's too short, and my hair is so fine and so slippy. So it's going to slip out. I did notice earlier with lice. So lice is a human condition. Lice, being the devil it is right now, is more new. That doesn't mean that we weren't always trying to get rid of it, right? It does mean that we've carried it with us our entire time. It does mean that it's not until a little bit later that we really start to like trying to do stuff for it. Um, we do see like the lice comb in ancient Syria in our first, or not Syria, Akkadian, in our first example of a full sentence, right? Um, we also see like recently I was talking about how they found DNA from the shaft, the gel, it's the saliva, the lice mixed with human hair particle, or not scalp particles, skin particles on the shaft of the Peruvian mummies, and those were in dreadlocked mummies. Uh, Dreadlocks are going to absolutely, if you get lice and you have dreads, it's impossible to get rid of them. Right. I shaved my head because I had war braids that I had braided in, that it kind of dreaded up at the top. And so I knew I wasn't getting them out without a lot of extensive combing. And one of my kids got lice after a weekend together. And I went, oh, well, I'm shaving that shit off. I knew a girl in treatment when I was younger who had dreadlocked her hair. But when I met her, she had everything shaved because she had gotten lice. And the only way to get rid of it was to shave it off. So we actually do see that with dreadlocks, it's almost impossible to get rid of lice. We do know today that lice are found easier in clean hair, that lice don't like dirty hair, right? So, you know, it's more likely that by not washing it, letting it dread it up, or things like that, that you're actually maybe going to have less lice attracted to you, right? So if they have the choice between you and the person over here who's braiding their hair and combing it every day, right? Oils are a huge thing, and olive oil will dissolve the exoskeleton of lice. So if you have lice, the best natural treatment, and better than most of the store-bought treatments that lice have developed immunities to, is actually olive oil with a tea tree oil and rosemary and lavender and peppermint in it. And if you put that in your hair and you let your hair soak in that for like an hour, and then you rinse it out, and then you comb through with vinegar. And this is because olive oil will actually dissolve the exoskeleton of lice. So using oils is a huge thing for keeping hair lice free, actually. And again, that's because lice thrive in clean hair, not dirty hair, right? And hair that is well oiled is maybe in our mind clean, but the lice are not looking at it as a clean environment, right? So you're definitely going to see that oiling. And we actually see herring. So all of those pictures that we had that had where we're like, okay, that one's obviously a curl, that's because they're using oil. And you see the Akkadians and the Assyrians and the ancient Romans and the ancient Greece really do this. And they oil their hair heavily, and then they coil their hair with the oils in it. They have very tightly coiled hair anyways in these regions, many of them, not all of them, but many of them. And curly hair is very prevalent, even if it's not tightly coiled hair, right? So when you're seeing that they're taking those oils and they're making the curls defined in their hair, right? Mayonnaise and vinegar rinse is a good one too. Mayonnaise suffocates them. I like dissolving them, but mayonnaise will suffocate them. One thing that I don't think a lot of people understand when we're talking about protective hairstyles, though, box braids are not good for anybody's hair. I have helped take care of children with tightly coiled hair where we have done box braids, where we have pulled box braids out. I know how to box braid, so I jump right in and help anytime I am needed, right? I love to braid. I've braided my whole life. I was taught how to braid like really, really young. So when you're looking at, especially in children with box braids, it actually pulls the hair out even in tightly coiled hair. So I have had nieces where we have pulled their hair out, and it's patches where their hairline is receding because of the tight pull of the box braid. I've had siblings, adult women whose hair is the same way, that they have to stop braiding their hair because it's pulled too much of their hair out. So when people are like, uh, it's not protected for white people, so don't wear it because it's not protected for white people. Your straight hair is it's not, it's going to ruin your straight hair. It's going to ruin everybody's hair. It ruins everybody's hair. It doesn't just ruin straight hair, it ruins tightly coiled hair as well. It really pulls out, and it will really stop growth, right? Yeah. Um, and it's also in the way they do it, right? It is absolutely in the way that box braids are being put in, right? Um, and it's because of the pull, because when we're putting box braids in, you wrap and then you're pulling tight to kind of get it in there, but you've only got really this one strand of hair that is kind of holding it there. No, I do not believe protective styles withstand anti-lice treatments better. Okay, so let me ask on that question. Do you think protective styles are they are less effective with anti-lice treatments, or are you saying do you think are you asking if protective styles are better for anti-lice? Um, I would state that if we're using modern protective styles, or what we call protective styles, if we're using modern things like box braids or dreadlocks, or the modern ways of doing box braids and dreadlocks, a lot of times there's a heavy amount of oh, fuck, like a gel substance, a edging substance within that is absolutely probably going to keep lice away. The lice are probably not going to like that or find that a healthy environment for them. So that's absolutely going to be problematic for the lice. I would say that it's probably not going to prevent anti-lice treatments. Like if you have hair that's in a protective style, uh, sorry, if you have hair that's in box braids and you've got like a lot of edging cream on it and stuff like that, you'd want to wash that out before you put anti-lice treatment in it anyways, right? Uh, but I would definitely say that things like that are going to prevent the anti-lice treatment from getting to the hair itself if you have lice in that uh, time frame. Like if you have lice in your hair and you have all of these heavy gels and heavy edging creams and heavy substances in your hair, that those heavy substances are going to be just as blocking as to the anti-lice treatments as they would be to the lice themselves. But again, lice not liking to live in those environments. So in ancient styles, we're not seeing a lot of protective styles, right? So in ancient hair, we're seeing dreadlocks. Dreadlocks aren't considered really a protective style. Um, dreadlocks are so my understanding, and I could be wrong, so please correct me if I am, is that really the protective styles that we see are braided styles. And those protective styles that we see that are braided styles um, generally involve either tight braids to the hair or to the head, or they generally involve box braids, braiding something else into the hair. Again, that's my understanding. If I'm incorrect in that, uh, to my understanding, things like dreadlocks and twists aren't in the protective category, um, but I could be wrong. Now, if we're talking about things like uh, box braids, um, older braiding styles, yes, we're not seeing a lot of that extensive, like creams or lotions or edging creams or things like that in that. And so you're not going to have that heavy substance within that. Absolutely. These are also things that you are not going to wear long time. Like you might wear them for a couple days and you're going to take them out and you're going to comb out your hair and you're going to braid it back up for the most part, excuse me. Because if you wear braids for longer than a week or two, your hair starts to dread up at the base of it. Okay, twist or protective. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure like which ones are considered protective and which ones are not, but that makes sense actually. So when you're looking at that, you're going to see that because you're constantly taking it out, you're constantly cleaning it, you're constantly working with it, you're going to have with Miracle Grow. Fuck off! Oh my god. Um, I hope you still have hair. Like, you do still I mean, I think I've seen you. You still have hair, right? Um, oh, Miracle Grow hair grease. Oh, thank God. I thought you were talking like I mean, I can see kids doing that. Like, I mean, we just do shit like that. I thought we were talking like the plant substance. Okay. Um, but yes, the hair grease will actually absolutely protect from catching, bugs that like dirty or clean hair anyways, right? So that was my first thought. I was like, holy shit, you have hair left, right? Um, but when we're looking at like braids and stuff through antiquity, right, we're looking at braids that are taken out on a regular basis, combed through and put back in. We're not looking at the presence of a lot of gels and stuff like that. Some of the first substances that we use to kind of tame hair, to kind of keep it into place, are egg whites. uh, I think that's really the first one, other than oils. Of course, we use a lot of oils early on. Um, and those oils, again, are protecting the hair from catching anything, right? Um, oh, well, then she did the right thing. Good girl. um, but as we're looking at those things, we're absolutely seeing that, I don't think that I have not seen documentation that we have found evidence of lice in any other mummies than the ones that they're talking about in Peru. That does not mean a whole lot. It just means that they maybe haven't examined that, right? So I can't really state what what we know about the different ways that this would have prevented or maybe locked hair might have maintained or things like that. I can totally see that if you have a singular lock growing out of the back of your head like the Polish lock, especially when it's down around your waist in a society where knits and things like that are kind of prevalent, and you don't have anything you're using in your hair, that you're probably crawling, right? Uh, but I can also see where, being in a society where you're braiding frequently, that you're less likely to be. And again, that's well, and even with like that single dread, if you are washing that every day, if you're vinegary washing that regularly, which is something that happens, things like that, you're absolutely going to see that there's going to be less presence of any, and I'm going to go ahead and get on this off the subject of knits and stuff because we have a other lives that have dealt with that. We have other things that deal with it. And it does make everybody's head itch, including mine. So, but when we're looking at different styles, we are definitely seeing that braids and that locks are really a kind of a cross cultural thing. Um, so wearing these things really isn't cultural appropriation versus appreciation, right? Because if it's a cross cultural thing, then it's not appropriation or appreciation. If you are So we know specifically in the United States that there are specific patterns of braids that were used to escape slavery, to kind of keep yourself alive, different things like that, right? So if you are using those specific patterns, uh, then this is problematic. You are using a specific pattern that's attributed to a specific space. Um, we were talking yesterday about appropriation versus appreciation. If you go to Africa and you meet, or you go out and you're involved with the Bantu people, and one of the women in the Bantu culture, Bantu knots your hair, you know, uh, this is appreciation. You are partaking, you're enjoying, you're a part of, and you're letting somebody, include you. That's what you are. You're letting somebody include you in their community. This is appreciation. If you were to take that knowledge and come back to the United States as a light skinned human being in the United States and start doing Bantu knots for everybody and selling it, or building a platform on doing Bantu knots, you would be crossing into appropriation instead of appreciation. Okay. When you are, like we were talking about earlier, if I am in a work environment and I've box braided my hair, or I'm in a work environment and I and somebody else both have our natural hairstyles, but their natural hairstyle is tightly coiled and my natural hairstyle is uber, uber fine straight, then if they're told that they need to box braid your hair, that they need to box braid their hair to be appropriate from the workplace, but I'm not told that, and I don't stand up and say, yo, dude, why don't I have to? Then that is a situation where if I was then to wear box braids, unless we're talking in protest, right? Then this would be appropriation, right? I'm not standing up for the right for everybody to be able to do this, right? Or to not do it as their choice. I'm not standing up for the right of everybody's natural hair, right? So uh, this is one of those allies accomplices moments, right? Like you can be an ally and not really be into the thing, or you can be an accomplice and really be doubling down, right? Um, but if I'm wearing box braids and somebody else is wearing box braids and they're getting shit for it and I'm not standing up for them, that's also appropriation, even though box braids or braiding other hair into your hair is not just from sub-Saharan Africa. It's not just from tightly coiled hair, right? Um, because I might be from Rome, right? I might be, living my Roman ancestresses' dreams, right? And they might be from, Nubia and living their Nubian ancestresses' dreams, right? Uh, so it's definitely maybe a part of my culture, but I'm not standing up for it to be a part of somebody else's culture as well. And that's where it becomes a problem. Not necessarily appropriation, but very much a problematic way of interacting and wearing, right? Yeah. Well, and micro braiding your hair doesn't cause the damage that box braiding your hair does. Um, so you can micro braid and it will look good, or be fun. And micro braiding is another thing that we absolutely see that's pretty global. We really don't see the braiding hair into other hair, which is really what box braids are, until later on. The first documented evidence that we have of braiding other hair into your hair is the ancient Romans. Um, and I do not know of any archaeological finds that show any braiding hair into your hair. Um, yeah. So, uh, you know, again, I want to remind people because I think that that is an important takeaway with everything. Uh, you should always be standing up for other people's rights. to do the things that you feel that you have the right to do. I feel that I have the right to wear my hair natural, whatever I want to do with my hair naturally, right? I should be supporting and uplifting other people's right. And that is another thing, right? Uh, we don't know somebody's bloodline unless we've asked them. My direct maternal line ends with a slave who is, through DNA records, I know Sudanese, right? So you couldn't look at me and know that my fourth great grandmother was a slave. But if I wear box braids, am I that's my direct maternal line for an ancestral worship. That's like my peak, my pinnacle of who I am. I don't consider myself a person of color, obviously. I don't consider myself black, obviously. But that's a pinnacle of who I am if you're ancestral, right? And my fourth great grandmother is Sudanese, black as they come, right? So is me wearing box braids then, like wrong because I look white, right? So you do see that you have that back and forth where it's like judging it based on something else, right? And see, and that's the other thing that we have to understand too. The statement is in Kansas, when lighter people wear them, it's a statement of hate. So this is where we move into appropriation. NoCap has some real good understanding, right? And so they wouldn't do that because they have good understanding. If you are in a space where if you know that flying the Confederate flag is a sign of hate and you fly the Confederate flag, then you're trying to promote hate. If you know that uh, marking a swastika on your body is a sign of hate, then you're not going to mark a swastika and sign it on your body unless you want to promote hate. The swastika actually traces back to a couple of different regions and is actually a sign of a god. It is associated with Odin. It's a sun within Nordic, Scandinavian culture, and it's also a sun and associated with a god in India, right? This is a beautiful symbol for both cultures. I'm Nordic, right? Follow my Nordic thought processes. I still am never going to wear a swastika because it's a sign of hate because somebody perverted it, right? So, um, well, it's shitty and sad that somebody perverted that. It would be just as shitty as sad if instead of giving information about it and working to change it, I decided to mark it on my body and let everybody think that's what I was, right? And so that's where we look at these different things and we have to take the temperature of the room. We have to take the understanding, right? And yeah, and that's the thing. If you're looking at, I'm Indigenous. My identity to me is always been and always will be Indigenous. I will not put my face at the front of any Indigenous movement because I understand the nuance of that. I understand that if people are more accepting of me as Indigenous because of my light skin, that it's problematic, that it gives them a safe space to be racist, right? I believe in myself as Indigenous. I have a direct maternal line that ends in the Sudan. I never enter people of color only spaces. I'm not a person of color. And well, I understand that those who know me know that. I also understand that the person across the room that came to this space to feel safe does not know that. And they're going to feel less safe in this space. Right. So when we are doing these things to uphold others, when we are taking action to uplift others, to decolonize, to demarginalize people, we have to read the room and make sure sucks that I can't be in people of color spaces. I mean, I've been invited in, right? But it still sucks, right? Because I love people of color more than I love light skinned people most of the time, right? Like, I mean, that's where I grew up. That's my family. That's how I feel, right? At the same point, it sucks that people made it that way. It doesn't suck that I'm being honorable about it. It sucks that people made my face unsafe. I didn't do that. That sucks. But that doesn't mean that I should push that suck onto somebody else, right? So if you are in a space where wearing these things or partaking in certain things might make it seem like you're partaking in or advancing hate, don't, don't, right? That's not what you want to do, and that's not who you're trying to be, right? So on the flip side, don't let anybody tell you can't French braid your damn hair, right? Um, don't let people on TikTok who you've never met tell you how you're supposed to identify, how you're supposed to express yourself, or what you know of your own history. Make sure that if you decide to wear anything, you make sure that everybody has the right to wear it. You make sure that if anybody's given shit for doing the things that you don't get shit for, that that shit stops, right? Um, yeah, smart enough to differentiate. Some of us aren't, but most people who are trying are, right? Most people who are doing their best are. Some aren't doing their best, right? So definitely make sure that you are understanding what you're doing. Definitely make sure that you are speaking up for others. Definitely make sure that you are educating, and definitely make sure that you understand where the line is, right? Again, everybody French braids their hair, everybody braids their hair. Not everybody braids specific map patterns into their hair to escape Southern slavery. Don't do the specific map patterns into your hair, right? Um, these are important because once again, you're either trying to change the world, you're trying to do better for others, or you don't give a flying fuck. Either or. Yeah, I won't wear yellow and black together ever again. Proud boys. Like I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and like I'll never wear yellow and black together again, right? Right? Or there's specific places you don't want to wear red or blue because people will attribute it to a specific thing, right? Um, I'm going to go ahead and touch before I leave on the differences between appreciation and appropriation again. And explanations or simple ways to talk to people about the inappropriateness of appropriation. So the first thing that I really want to talk about is the difference between appreciation and appropriation. So I'm going to use kente cloth for this because this was an example I used yesterday, and I think it's a pretty good example. And we can actually use the same example to see if we can see, right? So a couple years ago, half of Congress stood on the steps wearing kente cloth. And Nancy Pelosi led them, and it was a very big moment that was taken both ways, right? Now, if a Black person in Congress got together a bunch of kente cloth and said, hey, everybody, I think that we should wear this. We just signed this bill, and I think it was like the Crown Act bill. Maybe it was the anti-lynching bill. It was a huge bill of benefit for Black Americans, right? To show unity for Black Americans, as we're signing this bill, I'm handing out these kente cloths, and I would like everybody to wear them as we stand out front and announce this bill. This would be appreciation. It was the anti-lynching. I can't remember which one it was. This would be appreciation. This would be Congress people wearing a cloth that signifies the strength of African people here in this diaspora, and that was given by somebody who is a part of that diaspora to show support. That would be appreciation. If Nancy Pelosi handed out a bunch of kente cloth and said, hey, everybody, we should wear this, that is appropriation. And that is appropriation because it is a white woman building a platform on a Black matter using Black things. So this is a really good singular example that can show both sides depending on which it was. And I don't know which it was. But depending on which it was, shows you whether it's appreciation or appropriation, right? If it is a Black person handing this out and saying, we just signed this hugely important bill and I want everybody to show support for Black people around the country, then this is appreciation. If it is a white person handing it out saying, take this Black item and show everybody that we stand with Black people and build our platform based on this, then this is appropriation. If you are taking somebody's earrings, is another good example of this. There's a lot of indigenous jewelry out there. I was wearing these yesterday. These are some of my favorites. These are made by Makwa. I have her on Facebook. She's not here on TikTok. If you could see, it's not going to show. There we go. This is Bernie Sanders at the inauguration. These have sweetgrass braided around them, and they're some of my favorite earrings. Got another pair from them that has seal skin in the center. So buying indigenous created jewelry from indigenous people and wearing it and showing it off and talking about the indigenous people who created it and guiding people to them if they want the same thing. This is appreciation. This is showing your appreciation for our culture. If somebody were to take Makwa's jewelry design and decide to copy this jewelry design and sell this copy of this jewelry design as native inspired jewelry, or even with the braided sweetgrass in it, anything, right? But as native inspired jewelry who is not Turtle Island indigenous, who is not native, then that is appropriation because they are taking something and building money, monetizing it that they do not own, right? So this is another example of the difference between appreciation and appropriation. If you're building a platform off of making fun of indigenous groups and hunting aunties, that's appropriation. Just saying, right? Should not be making a platform off of mocking indigenous groups or taking a bite out of white sage or hunting aunties, right? And if you're doing that and indigenous people are sending you indigenous things and you're not giving indigenous people a shout out, that's pretty appropriative, right? Yeah. Well, and that guy really, for me, takes it too far when the obvious stereotyping and fetishization of aunties is too far for me. Like it becomes this obvious fetishization just out to hunt an auntie, and it's like, boo, bye. Like you can handle an auntie if she tried. Like boo, bye. But when you see that, those are appropriations. That's appropriating a culture. That is using a culture and what was given to you for understanding by a culture to build your platform and monetize, while mocking, right? Well, fetishizing, right? Absolutely. And that's the same. That's another thing. When we're looking at, these are some of my favorite shoes. I was Hera for Halloween. The video shows it. These are the shoes that I wore for Halloween. I bought these from somebody in India, right? Went online, found a shop. These are the shoes I liked, right? So buying an Indian design from an Indian person, as in India, right, is appreciation of Indian culture. I wear them just casually. I do have a couple of different Indian shirt styles that I actually use because the tea tunic is pretty global, universal before, and you can't find a tea tunic anywhere else these days. And so like if I'm going a Viking, dressing Viking, I'll wear a tea tunic, right? And since they made it down to the Middle East anyways, right? So, I might utilize it in a different way, but never in a mocking way, right? I might wear my native jewelry that I get from native people to a formal ball, right? I might wear it out to a ball game, right? I might have bought something that is, say native jewelry that a lot of times you'll see with regalia where they'll have like beaded medallions that are tied in their hair. Now, say I, not being native, say buy some of this from somebody, and I'm wearing those medallions out and around just for every day, right? That's okay. I don't sit in ceremony as a non-native person. Again, hypothetical. I'm not sitting in ceremony. So understanding the ceremonial use that is associated with that is a totally different thing, right? Um, I have sari fabric that I'll use as wall covering because it's so beautiful, and I can do beautiful like wall plant coverings with gorgeous sari fabric, right? Things like that. These are ways of appreciating a culture. Again, always making sure that you're getting these things from the people and the cultures that they come from, um, and not you maybe not using it in the exact way that that culture intends it to be used, right? But still not mocking the culture in your intention. Now, say I take these shoes and I take somebody bought me a pair of I think they're South Korean pants. Say I take these shoes and those, and then I take one of the Indian style tunics that I have, and I put it all together, and I put a bindi in the middle of my forehead, and I put a thing over, and I go out on like and start mocking. That is mockery. That is appropriation. Doesn't matter that I bought it from people from all of those cultures. It is that it's not even that I'm wearing things from a couple different cultures. It's the application of the bindi on top of it, and then the acting mocking of uh, Indian culture, right? So those are those shifts that we have to watch out for, that we have to look for, and that we have to ensure. And I say that because we all have space to be accomplices to others. I have met Black trans women. Okay. That's like 3 different marginalized groups in one person, right? There is still space for a Black trans woman to be an accomplice for other people. Maybe a Black trans woman is an accomplice for Indigenous women. Maybe a Black trans woman is an accomplice for disabled veterans, right? You always have somebody that you can be an accomplice for. I don't care how marginalized you are. I don't care how many different marginalizations you can encompass in one body, because some of us can encompass a whole fucking lot. We all have space to be allies and accomplices for others. We all have space where we can find other people to uplift. And like I was saying, and I try and say repetitively, you cannot expect other people to respect you if you don't respect them. Demanding respect without giving respect is stupid. I mean, it's a lot of other things, but that's the base of it. Why do you think anybody would give you respect if you're not giving respect, right? And this is another area where that comes in. We need to make sure that we're making it reciprocal, that it's a two-way street in everything we do. Reciprocity is one of those animistic things, understandings that is healthy for us, that keeps us moving forward as humans. That's what nurturing and communal is, right? Nurturing other people means that you're nurtured. Community means that you have community. You're providing for community, and community is providing for you. There is always space for you to provide, to be communal, to be accomplices to other people, no matter what your marginalization is. Okay. So when we are moving forward with different things, you need to make sure you don't need to do anything. But if you're saying you got the information from me, if you're using me as the thing, please make sure that you know, give that explanation, give that understanding in your actions, that you're not just taking my shit and using it in negativity for other people, that when you take my shit, you're using it in that reciprocity, that you're using in that exchange, that you are being allies and accomplices to other, that you're uplifting others, because it is only through us uplifting everybody's voices, right? All the communities that are being marginalized or oppressed are harmed. It is only by uplifting all of those voices that we overthrow the shit that's going on, that we get out of this space. You can't just uplift Black voices and overthrow American culture. Where are we going then? Right? You can't just uplift Indigenous voices and overthrow American culture. Where are we going then? Right? Um, you have to make sure that you are uplifting all of it and uplifting the anti-hate of it, right? And if you are participating in the hate by going, oh, you're nasty, or you're bad, or you're this, or you're that, and I'm this, and I'm that, right? If you are participating in that, you're not overthrowing it. So when you're dividing, when you're part of lateral violence, when you are causing problems, when you have decided that you get to deem who is who, when you decided that you can't be this enough or that enough unless you meet my standards of this enough or that enough, you are really, really participating in and perpetuating the trauma, the colonialism, and the hate that we are living in. You're not fixing it, right? I say that because that's pretty important in today. So I explained the difference between appropriation and appreciation. I want to explain why appropriation is bad, because many people need to have a way to explain it to somebody, because there are so many people out there that don't get it. If you are trying to find an ancestral connection and you're appropriating somebody else's ancestors, you're never going to find the ancestral connection that you want. You're going to connect to the wrong fucking people, and they're going to think that you're an idiot. So they're not going to help you, and they're probably going to hinder you. If you are if you have an Indian mask or an indigenous mascot, right? Chief so and so of this town who is this high school's mascot, and you think that that's appropriate because you're honoring said chief, you don't honor people by telling them how you think they're supposed to be. You honor people by allowing them to tell you who they are and what they would like you to do about it, right? That's honoring somebody. It's never honoring somebody to decide what they are for yourself, despite their constant telling you it's not right, right? Um, and if you are appropriating because you just don't understand, then what I need to say to you is that we all have these unique, beautiful things about us. When somebody uses those unique, beautiful things for exploitation, when somebody uses those unique, beautiful things to better themselves while ignoring the suffering of the cultures that those unique, beautiful things come from, I don't know of a single concept that doesn't call that morally inept and faulty. It is completely amoral in pretty much every concept that we have to steal from somebody and use it to harm them. And when you are selling Indigenous inspired jewelry from the comfort of your uber white privileged home, that you've been able to go out and spend thousands of dollars on buying, and maybe you're not even making half of it, you are taking from Indigenous women who can't feed their children and are selling Indigenous jewelry so that they can feed their children. So you are doing harm when you are appropriating and you are using that to further yourself, right? Which is a part of appropriation as well. Again, appreciation is uplifting. Appreciation of a culture uplifts that culture. Appreciation of a culture gives that culture a louder voice and a higher standing. Appropriation pushes it down. So, in the case of the person in the videos on TikTok, if that person was going into a powwow and showing the people dancing and going, look at this, these costumes is, even if they were calling it costumes, like these costumes and had to be corrected, right, are so gorgeous, right? And look at the way they're dancing. Do you see that footwork? Wow, look at the feathers on that. Wow, look at the beadwork. Oh, I wonder who did their beadwork. That's appreciating that dancer, right? If you're going in and you're like shaking it up and, oh my God, that's so cool, blah, 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 where's the aunties at? That is appropriation. It's building a platform, right? If you are going in and you are going to somebody and you're going, "Oh, that sage, that's really cool. Can I have some?" And then you're taking the sage that they've just gifted you because you asked for it and biting it. Um, you're not learning about the culture, you're not uplifting the culture, and you're using the amusement of other people about that culture to build your platform, right? So that is appropriation. On the other hand, if you were to go in and go, "Wow, that's really beautiful. I've heard a lot about white sage. Could you tell me more about it?" And the person is like, "So this is it, and this is what we use it for, and this is how we use it. It's ceremonial, blah, blah, blah. Would you like some? Because it has to be gifted. It can't be bought. It must be gifted, right?" And then you're like, "Look, everybody, I was gifted this, and it means this, and it means that, and it's for ceremony, and it's important to these people, right? And you should not use it unless it's gifted to you." Then you're showing appreciation. Uh, If you've decided you want yourself an auntie because somebody told you aunties were cool and you go auntie hunting, that's appropriation. That's actually fetishization. Um, if you find that you are naturally more attracted to people of darker skin, that itself is not fetishization or appropriation. It's an attraction, right? But if you only go for people who are darker of skin and only because they're darker of skin, that's appropriation, fetishization, right? And very racist, actually. These are some of those subtle differences that you have to assess for yourself as you're moving through things and understand and assess within yourself if you're doing things for a positive reason and if you are doing them to uplift others or to try and uplift yourself, right? Um, the other thing is within any of these things, uh, it's all on YouTube, love. Within any of these things, if somebody has asked you not to do something, don't. Um, if you got 1,000 people on TikTok who are yelling at you because you box braided your hair or somebody box braided your hair, explaining what's real and explaining the truth behind it is perfectly acceptable. Don't let them change how you interact in your real life. If you have a bunch of people around you explaining that in Kansas, wearing box braids in your hair signify and not being black signifies hate, then you're not going to do it. Even if you know all the reasons that it's appropriate for you to be able to wear them, you're still not going to be able to, or you're still not going to do it because you're not supporting hate. You're not trying to uplift hate, right? Um, just some of those subtle differences. I'm going to go ahead and take off for the day. This is all on YouTube, though it is a little broken up on YouTube. I did make sure, though, that I covered all the subjects again. I'll try and get all the pictures uploaded to my website so that people can see the pictures. Again, these don't come from articles because I don't really know of a lot of articles that discuss these things. They just come from different finds that I've kind of compiled the artifacts or the belongings from. So it will be more pictures than anything else. I don't even know if I have anything else really to upload. Um, and when you're moving forward, make sure that, again, always assess your surroundings. Always remember that we all have room to be accomplices for others. And this is about uplifting everybody. It's not about uplifting you. Community is about taking care of everybody. That doesn't mean don't take care of yourself. We do need to take care of ourselves. We do have a tendency to moralize whether or not you take care of yourself. Like it's immoral to be taking care of yourself, it seems like sometimes. So do make sure you're taking care of yourself in it, but also make sure that you are always uplifting, especially marginalized voices, especially voices that need somebody to uplift theirs. Let me clarify that a marginalized voice does not need you to speak for them. They need you to uplift their platform so their voice is heard. This is the same if you're entering into marginalized communities or any community trying to help. You tell them your skills, ask what they need. You don't tell them what you think they need because you're wrong. Always, always, always wrong. We don't uplift marginalized voices by speaking for them. We don't uplift people by speaking for them or over them or to them. We uplift people by uplifting their voice so it's heard better. And we should always be uplifting each other so that we're all heard better, especially if you have any form of privilege, right? I'm indigenous as fuck, but this is a privilege and I use it. This is my armor and I use it so that I can make sure that people who do not have this privilege are heard, right? Again, that's where I was talking about I'll never take a front stance because if you are looking at my face and it makes it easier to you to hear things, then that's racist as fuck to start with, right? If you can only hear me because I look white, it's not okay, right? So again, that's about uplifting instead of speaking for. And again, that is about being an accomplice. And we all have room to be accomplices to other people's. With any of these things that we have discussed, both tattoos and hair over the last couple days, please remember that specific patterns used by specific people that you use without being given them by those specific peoples to use for yourself as an appreciation, right, is appropriative and is stolen valor. If you wear a war bonnet, you're stealing somebody's valor. That stolen valor is the same as a Purple Heart. If you're wearing a chin tattoo and you are not a part of a culture that tattoos their chin, that is stolen valor. Okay. If you are wearing specific braid patterns that come from specific needs, that is stolen valor. If you are wearing Bantu knots that weren't put into your head by somebody who was Bantu, and you're trying to build a platform off it or sell it or anything like that, that is stolen valor, right? These are things that we should not be doing. And again, I mean, can't tell you who to be. I'm not trying to. I am saying that if you're going to use my information, make sure you're doing it in the kindest way possible because I am really here for the anti-hate portion of it, right? I'm really here for that change. So much love to everybody. Have a wonderful day. I'll probably be in again tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you so much, Richard. I appreciate you.